Hello, welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us each and every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals with Game Informer staff and special guests around the industry. I am the very tongue-tied Marcus Stewart. I am joined by Kyle Hilliard. Hello.
Hello, what's up?
Hey. Yes, you are. You know who else is here is Charles Hart in his pink shirt Kirby glory. Hi, sir.
It's true. And it's I just showed you guys, but I'll do it for the listeners. I have a pink Kirby shirt.
Or maybe for the watchers on YouTube.
Yes, watchers. And I'll explain. It's a pink Kirby shirt, and I'm slowly standing up. And what? It's fading into blue.
Whoa, what a twist. It's like blue on the bottom. He had a fashion-y term for it. What'd you call it?
Ombre?
Ombre? Yeah.
I think that's how you pronounce it. When my prom date junior year of high school had a pink to peach ombre dress, and I had to learn that word when I went to get my tie from Men's Warehouse, wherever I went. So.
Okay, I was gonna say, isn't ombre just Spanish for man, like just a guy?
It is spelled the same, but without an H.
Okay, is it just so it's ombre?
I guess.
Umbre? Yeah,
I missed the wrong podcast to be talking about fashion terms, probably. I would assume.
Yeah, fashion and foreign languages, I guess. Two things that fit together very, very harmoniously. Yes, welcome. We got a big show today. Big talker of the week is, of course, Senua Saga, Hellblade II, which, by the way, I'm very proud that I said that title right, because in my brain, I think on the NGT, I've been getting it mixed up with the first Hellblade game. The naming convention for both, they flipped them. It's weird. It confuses me every time I have to write it, and I didn't do that this time. But we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door remaster, remake? Question mark?
Somewhere in the middle, yeah. But like just a really hardcore remaster, yeah.
I like that term, hardcore remaster.
Yeah.
We've also got to check in on some cool upcoming indies that we've been playing. Of course, we are in the month of indie games, that is May. And before we jump into all of that, of course, we want to remind you about our Game Informer subscription. You can get a print magazine right now for 10 issues for 1 year for $19.91, which is our sales price, which is still ongoing. As well as you can get 20 issues for 2 years for $39.99. It's the best way to support Game Informer directly, show our parent company that we're worth keeping around and all that good stuff. And it helps keep smiles on all of our faces. Because you see how we're smiling right now? You see that?
Jobs are nice.
Jobs are nice. You heard it here first. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 out now, or at least the time you're listening to this, it came out Tuesday. I reviewed the game. My review is up on the site now. I gave this game a 9 out of 10. And before I even jump into sort of the my impressions of it, this is one of those exciting releases where the reviews have been pretty all over the place, which I always find that very exciting and very interesting to see sort of a game that is polarizing, and you can see points made on, like, the same points being received differently of, like, the reason I like this game is the reason somebody else might not be as into it. So that was something pleasantly surprised, because when I played this game, and I love the game, like I said, I gave it a 9, and I was doing that thing where you wonder, like, I wonder if I'm going to be on an island here, or is this going to be like, I'm just preaching to the choir and everyone agrees that this is great, and then waking up and seeing, like, okay, I'm roughly in 50% of the camp right now. Okay, interesting. Kyle, I know you've gotten to play a little bit of it. Charles, you have not yet. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to ask you, are either of you guys particularly big fans of the first game?
Yeah, I like that first game a lot. I like Ninja Theory a lot. I just pulled up the list as we're talking about, because I was like, man, I think I've played every Ninja Theory game at least somewhat. Because there's the big one is, like, there's Kung Fu Chaos was, like, their debut game on Xbox in 2003, which was like a party game. And I dabbled in that one, like, barely. Like, I think I was going to say,
are you secretly the biggest Kung Fu Chaos fan out there?
Yeah.
You called it the big one, as if I was expecting it to be like, oh, I didn't realize they made that game. I was like, oh, I've never heard of this.
I guess when I say big one, I mean, like, the one that people wouldn't think of as being a Ninja Theory game. That was very much like just their first game out of the gate, because they went straight from that to Heavenly Sword, which was like to me, I loved that game. I was actually thinking maybe for replay this week, maybe I'll see if I still have my copy, and maybe we go play some of that, because that was like, that's the game. People like to, and rightly so, point to Naughty Dog as like, these guys know what they're doing with performance capture. They've revolutionized that whole process, and like, absolutely that's true. Like, Naughty Dog does amazing performance capture, but for me, I was always kind of like, well, no, Heavenly Sword was like, they were the ones that took that the most seriously, the earliest, Yeah. And it shows off in Hellblade II. Like that, the performance capture is incredible, frankly.
Yes, Heavenly Sword still the best use of the 6-axis, in my opinion. The guiding the arrow.
I guess I turned that off pretty quickly.
I mean, listen, it's not like that's a high bar to jump over, but I remember that was one of the few times where that was still novel. I was like, hey, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yes, Heavenly Sword God. Senua's Saga, see, I almost said Sacrifice. Hellblade 2, sequel to Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah.
That came out in 2017, which is a game that I also was a fan of. Despite having some issues with it, it was one of those games where I was happy that I played it, even if I did have some problems with some of the like combat design and the pretty like, I guess, bland puzzle solving. Not that the puzzles were like, it was more like they used the same puzzle over and over to where you kind of got sick of it. Even if the puzzle themselves were like conceptually kind of interesting. I think this game really addresses a lot of my personal complaints with that first game, where I'm not sure how far away it's set from the first game. It seems like it's not that long after. You can even maybe argue it might be immediately after the end. It's hard to tell, but
yeah. Or it might be like real time, depending on the actress that plays Senua. Like, let's just have her. Not that she looks like she's aged or anything. She looks pretty much the same as she did in the last game. But I wonder if that's like, maybe you could take it as that. It's been a couple years or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, Senua's now travels to another island to try to chase down the Norsemen, the slavers that were terrorizing her homeland, and also killed her lover Dillion. And I love the start of this game because, one, it's the first sort of showcase of how unbelievably beautiful this game is. It is. I was talking to Wesley about this, and I think he said that it's probably the best looking game he's ever played. And I was like, it's up there for sure. I don't know if it's number one, but it's up there.
It's in the conversation, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's just like, it starts with this amazing shipwreck sequence, and you're making your way trying to find the sort of the head slaver and all that stuff. And the gameplay is very identical to the first game. It's very linear. You're kind of just walking and occasionally talking or having Senua's voices or kind of psychosis-induced furies talking to her as you're solving puzzles and occasionally getting into fights. But like, presentation aside, I love the performances are fantastic. Like Senua, Melina Juergen, shout out to her, still does a fantastic job as Senua. And I think I like the story in this game a little bit more, because I think the first game is a lot more of a personal story. It's a lot more of a Senua trying to overcome her traumas caused by her abusive father, and then sort of what happened to her lover getting killed, and then trying to find salvation for his soul, and also trying to combat or like come to terms with sort of her own mental illness. And this game's a lot more like, she's still dealing with that stuff, which I appreciate too. But it's a lot more focused on her using the lessons she's learned from the first game to try to help other people. Because now this is like, she has companions now for the first time. The first game she was alone for pretty much the entirety of it. Like, the only other character you really saw was I don't remember his name, but her like mentor guy that you would see in the sort of like mixed media, like you would see like FMV of his face kind of superimposed on things, and you only hear him now in one of the sort of like secret totems that you find. But she actually has like a small group of allies that you meet for the first time, and I like the dimension that adds to her character, because it's seeing her kind of have to deal with other people and have to tackle sort of like the fear of being an outcast and just being shunned for being different, but then also because of what she learned in the first game, trying to use those lessons to help these other characters that have their own sort of problems that they're dealing with. And I think the story takes that in some interesting directions. I said in my review that I think this game is more broadly appealing as a story. Like, it feels a lot more of like an epic than sort of the more intimate story that the first game was, because she's, without getting like into super spoilers, like she's dealing with a much more like grander threat that feels easier to understand, because the first game, the biggest question was whether even if anything you were seeing was even real. You're like, is this all in her head? Is like, are there fantastical things actually happening? Is it both? And I think, and this game answers that question pretty quick of like, oh, no. Okay, this is real, because there's other people here seeing this and reacting to this.
Well, and I mean, it's still pretty, right? I mean, I am still very unclear. Maybe there's a point in the game where it makes more sense, but I saved the guy, right? The mysterious stranger from the Drag Hour or whatever.
Right.
So, like, I've met one person, but the whole, like, leading up to that, everything, I don't know, constantly to me, which is an interesting thing about the game to me, is like, I don't really know if any of this is actually happening. I know it, but the important part is like, it doesn't really matter, because it's like mostly just how is it affecting Senua. Doesn't matter if it's real or fake. It's just like, she's going through it, and that's all you need to know. And Melissa Juergens is going to perform the hell out of it. Like, that's kind of like my takeaway from Hellblade, you know?
Yeah, I would say once you get further, I think they kind of it does become a little more like, there are moments where you're still like, how real was it? But then there's other moments where you're like, okay, no, this is clearly happening. There's way too many people seeing this.
Okay, well, that's good. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so and which is, I always thought that was the most interesting question or answer or potential answer to that question, was like, what if it's just both? I don't know why it couldn't just be both.
Yeah, totally.
Like, she could live in a fantastical world and also have mental health issues. But I think that because of that, it makes it an easier story, maybe for like a broader audience to sort of grasp and follow along with. But even then, I don't think that stops it or takes away the more like interesting, like more thoughtful elements of it either. Like the moments with Senua sort of questioning if what she's doing is leading her, I guess we'll call them friends, to their deaths or not. And still also combating sort of like her father's influence. Like, it's that demonic voice that you occasionally hear when she's kind of at her lowest, like hearing that come back. And I really appreciate that, because I think that's such a good illustration of mental health anyway, of like, I'm glad that the first game didn't just say like, oh, she solved her mental health problems, now she's good. It's like, no, she's still, like it's an everyday thing. And like, yes, she's more confident, and she's kind of embraced it as kind of, she's not trying to get rid of it now. Like, she's learned to live with it and accept it. But it's still like, when things go wrong, she's still susceptible to sort of like falling back into that darker place. She just is better equipped to climb out of that hole than she was the first time. And I also noticed, and I actually think this was a good call, that the voices aren't as integral to the actual gameplay as they were in the first game. Because if you remember in the first game, especially in combat, there were instances where you would get blindsided off screen, or someone could attack you from behind, and the voices would have to warn you, like, hey, look out behind you.
Oh, sure.
And that was like your only cue that was happening. And thankfully the combat is better now, where that doesn't happen at all. People are always in front of you, so you don't have to rely on them like that. And the voices also just don't go out of their way to mislead you as often as they did in the first game. So they're pretty much just storytelling, sort of like flourish. Like, they're just
They did get angry at me when I was trying to solve a puzzle and I was in the wrong location, where they were like genuinely, like, it's like what probably voice actors want to do in those situations where they have to record all those lines that are like, try again, you know, where the voices were like, it's not here, you need to turn around. And I actually kind of
really?
Yeah, like, I appreciated that sort of forcefulness of like the voice actually getting angry at me for like not being in the right place. Like, it functioned both as like, oh, this helped me solve the puzzle, but also as like, a great example of the kind of stuff Senua has to deal with. Like these voices that go back and forth between being angry and helpful and like soft and angry. Like it's strange and crazy. Like crazy is a bad word to use, but like it makes you feel like you don't have a grasp on things in a way that I think is what they're going for and is effective.
Yeah. Also, you should definitely wear headphones playing this game, like 100%. I think the 3D audio design and the sound design in general is phenomenal. So the game tells you up front, you should definitely heed that. And the other thing with the voices is that, to your point about them sort of like yelling at you and when you're doing things wrong, the other twist that I think they kind of get in the way is that now that Senua has other people to talk to, like, because they're constantly in your ear. So there are moments when you're talking to someone else and then they're also talking too, and then that conversation can get muddled a bit because you're trying to hear someone over them. And that's where it kind of like the artistry of it kind of gets in the way of it being a game. Or it's like, oh, I really want to hear what this guy has to say because he's saying something that's interesting or important. But then the voices are chiming in. They're kind of sometimes they're louder than the person. And I just like, okay, I would really love to. And I didn't play with subtitles just to make it as cinematic as possible because there's no HUD or anything either. But there were times where I was like, oh, I wish this. I don't know how you do this to make this better. I don't know if you just lower the audio of the voices or not. But it was like, this does feel a bit like a genuine hindrance. And then there's other times where you'll be talking to someone and then they'll take a break in the conversation and then the voices will chime in and say some stuff. And then Senua will respond, but it feels kind of like unnatural and awkward because they'll ask Senua a question and then the voices will say like 5 things and then Senua will be like, yes. And it's just like, that was a weird, it seems weird that the person just like, hello, like, did you hear what I said or anything? And then there are a few conversations like that where it's like, well, I guess that's the alternative and that's not good either, I guess. So I guess, which one do I actually want? I don't know. But I guess that's sort of a weird, just like the introduction of allies kind of brought that new problem. But with that aside, the other improvements to the combat, which is maybe my favorite part of the game, which is weird to say because this game is ultimately, I hate to use the term walking simulator because it's got a really negative connotation to it, but it is more of like it's a vibe game, at least to me. Yeah. Like I don't go into these games expecting God of War or Devil May Cry or anything like that, despite it being Ninja Theory. It's like, oh no, like there's action for sure, and it's exciting.
And they are good at combat. Like they're good at it when they go all in on it for sure.
Yeah, and even like they're good at this style of combat, but the game is a lot of like you're walking and you're absorbing the environment, you're absorbing the story and just the terrifying atmosphere, which this game does a really good job of building. But the combat itself, which is still those intimate one-on-one encounters, I think it does smooth out some of the rough edges from the first game. Like I mentioned before, they get rid of the sort of getting hit from out of nowhere. But also, the big thing is that when you die, you don't have to worry about that weird rot mechanic that was in that first game, where it was like, hey, if you die too many times, we're going to erase your save, which I don't think they ever actually followed up on from what I remember hearing at the time. Like, I don't think it actually did that. I never had it happen to me.
I mean, that's the thing is ultimately you didn't have to worry about it in the first game either. But they wanted you to think you did, which I always love. I'm all about just like lie to me to make the experience more interesting. You know what I mean? Okay. Like I think we've talked about it once before. Like they changed Last of Us trailers and like Metal Gear Solid 2 trailers to make it seem like I'm totally fine with that stuff. But like some people really got upset about Hellblade. They did not like that.
Yeah,
I kind of never got into it because I was afraid I was gonna die and like ruin my save. I didn't realize it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I think I found that out from, I think it was Jacob Geller. I did a podcast with him and Blake about the first game. I think he was the one that clued me in because I asked, and I was like, really? And I was like, oh, I almost wish they had gone all the way with that.
I was pretty shortly after it came out. I think there was like an interview where they were like, hey, it's actually, don't worry about it. I mean, it's like that movie, Fargo, the movie Fargo. It says like based on a true story at the beginning. It's not. It's like it's just we're just gonna set the stage here at the beginning to make you feel a specific way about this adventure. Yeah, it was a weird thing. But yeah, there's not even text on screen in this game, like explaining anything. Is there, Marcus? I feel like I haven't seen any text yet. I didn't even get to press X to attack. You know, like it was,
yeah, I guess so.
Right.
I'm thinking about it now. I mean, this game is very HUD free. Like, there's no health bars. There's no nothing. You're not even reading anything and if you could, it probably wouldn't be in English. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just sort of like, hey, you'll figure it out. I mean, it's not. It's a very simple control scheme. You know, when you're walking around, you just move and hit X or whatever to interact, and then when you're in combat, it's a heavy and light attack, and then a dodge and a parry, and that's it.
Yeah,
and then your mirror thing, to activate your slow-mo mirror.
I mean, that's four button inputs for combat. Like the way they teach you it is interesting because, like, again, like kind of in that puzzle system earlier where it was like you're in the wrong place. Like, I was fighting a guy and I had to counter. I don't know if do you remember this, Marcus? Like, that's how you succeed in that. And the voices are just like, this isn't working. Whatever you're doing, it's not working. So I was like, okay, well, let me try some other button combinations here until I find out what the parry button is.
Yeah, and honestly, I had an easier time with that because I replayed Hellblade 1 like a year ago, so my memory was still pretty fresh. For that podcast I'd mentioned before, I had revisited it, so I went into it kind of like, okay, I know how this works, basically. I know what to look out for, but even then, like, you know, there's no, like, parry button. It's just like if you see, like, a glint in your sword, depending on which color it is, you can tell, like, okay, this is a parry attack, and this is, like, a red glow, so it's a heavy thing that I can block, but it's going to stagger me and potentially leave me open for another attack, so it would be better to dodge it. And I say, like, we talk about just how good the game looks, but I think the battles maybe show it off the best, because the animation and just the cinematography behind it, it's just, as repetitive as they are, you're still just fighting one guy and then immediately moving on to another guy, and sometimes it's the same enemy type, but I never got tired of it because of just how cool it looked. And I also love how the transitions from, like, enemy to enemy, like, they're so varied. Like, it's not just the same, like, all right, someone else steps up because it's their turn. Like, there'll be little things of, like, oh, this guy has an arrow and he's trying to shoot Senua, and then Senua will throw the guy that she just killed in front of him, and he'll take the arrow, and then you'll start fighting the guy that tried to shoot you, or stuff like that. Or, like, a random character is getting attacked, and she'll go deal with them, and then stop the guy attacking her, and then that triggers the next fight. Like, I like that they keep mixing it up so it's not as repetitive as it maybe really is.
Like, if you were to zoom out and just look at it fully mechanically, all they're really doing is just, like, you're in a room and a bad guy walks into the room and you kill him, and then another bad guy walks into the room, like, one after another. That is technically all I've done in the fights to this point, but it doesn't feel that way at all because of the animation. Like, it feels so fluid and interesting, but it's really all it is like, fight this guy. Okay, you got him? All right, here's the next guy. Like, that's what it is. You know?
Yeah. And it gets cooler when you get to, like, there was one sequence where you're, like, in a big battle, so you're, like, surrounded by other people, both, like, bad guys and allies, and so you're seeing other people fighting around you, and I think that's when those transitions get cool, because they incorporate the other people around you into your fight. So again, it's very much like, okay, it's me versus you, but it doesn't feel like you're just coming down a corridor and fighting me, because it's like a seamless, like, okay, yeah, you're dead, and now the guy next to you who was waiting, but, like, was fighting someone else and then finished killing their guy, now he's here and we're doing it. And like, there's boss battles in this game too, but, like, they're not fights, and this is where I'm, like, being vague for, like, story reasons, but they're a lot more involved in, like, they're really not fights at all, honestly. they're more sort of like navigation / meat. I don't know if I want to use puzzle, but it's more like, hey, can you reach this thing without dying? And those are okay. Those are more cool for just, like, the set piece moments than just, like, what you're actually doing, which is maybe the biggest sticking point with this game, where it's very much sort of dividing people of, like, this game is ultimately a very beautiful and, like, emotional, like, cinematic experience with limited interactions, and whether or not you're okay with that is kind of like where you're gonna land. And, you know, if you've played the first game, you have a pretty good idea of whether or not, like, how down you are for that. But from what I was reading, because I was reading a couple of reviews this morning, 'cause I just wanted to get a sense of like both sides of the spectrum. And again, it was very much people saying like, I like it for this reason, and other people not liking it for the same reason. And I liked it a lot because I enjoyed that first game. I think this is a better version of that game because besides just the mechanical and like presentational improvements, but I think I enjoy the story a little bit more. As much as I love that first story, I think this is like a good sort of like evolution of Senua's growth from that game. And it also doesn't lose any of the artistry that the first game had, despite the fact that this game, I would assume, probably had a lot more money put into it because of Microsoft owning it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, they just made this look nicer. Like, no, this still feels like it's got that almost kind of like thrifty, handcrafted artistic touch that first game famously had, because it was like a AA game that they just did a lot of really cool, like, cheaper tricks to make it look more expensive than it actually was. And it like, this game still has that while still looking absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it looks
and and I think that, like, I just walked away as someone that didn't really feel like it needed a sequel to Hellblade 1. I think that this slant of having her interact with other people for the first time and kind of telling that story of, like, what is it like when she has to be more of a leader now after being an outcast the first time. I think they tell an interesting story there that really resonated with me in a way that I don't know if I was totally expecting. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And it was one of those games where, like, I didn't know where I landed on it until I was writing the review, and then I realized, like, I have a lot of really good things to say. And I was like, I think this is a 9. Okay, I guess this is a 9. Yeah, I'm excited to see where you guys land on it too, because of how split, like, everyone else is in the industry seems to be on it.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to play more. And it's not like crazy long either. It's like a very reasonable length, right?
It's like roughly the same length as the first game.
Okay, yeah, see, that's great.
It's like 7-8 hours, and that's assuming if you go out of your way to poke around for those 2 secrets, like the hidden trees and the weird totems that have the little basically audio logs that you can listen to.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But other than that, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You gonna check this out, Charles?
I don't know. I might. I feel like I should finish the first game first, which I only didn't really get through. One, because I didn't want to sit down and be like, okay, Charles, you really can't die, because then you can never play this game. Because if I died like 6 out of the 7 hours in, I would just be like, okay, I'm not gonna play again because I got too far and I don't want to start over. But also, it was like a thing where it was just like, I picked it up and I was like, this is cool, but it's just not like the proper vibe for me right now in a game. And I think it is a different vibe in my life now.
Yeah.
So I'm interested.
Well, I mean, you know what I always say, Charles. It's like, play the new cool thing. Just play 2. There's a recap for the first game at the beginning of 2. It's fine.
There
it
is.
gets the job done.
It's also a thing of like, and this is really putting it off, but I want to get like a nicer TV at some point. And if this game is like really that gorgeous, I want to do it justice when I'm actually playing it. But
that's fair.
I have no concrete plans for doing that, so that's not like around the corner.
It is a game. I mean, I'm not usually like I don't usually play games wearing headphones. I just don't. I'm not comfortable that way. But this is a game where I put on headphones and and there's a lot of outdoor sequences where like the sun is coming up and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I have headphones on and HDR turned on and that kind of stuff. Like, I usually can't even notice HDR stuff. I just don't have the eyes for that. But it's like sunlight is where kind of HDR sings the most, and this game is full of sunlight, which I suppose is a weird thing to say. So it is one worth holding out to make sure you can have the best version of that experience.
Yeah. I think I saw someone in a review say this, and I'm wondering if I agree. Where they said they might have some of maybe the best lighting they've ever seen in a game. And I think the lighting.
We haven't talked about Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door yet. But
I think the lighting is not any good, but they do cool things with it, like beyond just like, hey, this is a really nice sunrise. But there's when it gets into the more dreamy stuff, the way they use color to sort of express Senua's mood, or just like the direness of the situation, or like look how nightmarish this like sequence is.
Yeah,
You know,
there's like you're fighting these enemies that feel like shattered glass, and the light is like reflecting through them and stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's a cool game. It's like I said, it is a vibe game. It it depends on like,
and that vibe is despair.
Despair, but also, well, probably more despair, but also like there's some like acceptance, which was a theme of the first game too, but like allowing, not only accepting yourself, but allowing other people to accept you,
Right.
despite your faults, which I appreciate about this game. So yeah, I walked away with it. Like I said, I was surprised at myself how high I felt about it by the time I was done with it.
Cool.
Because I was like, oh, this will probably be fine. But yeah, I really love it. So check out my full review now on GameInformer.com. Kyle, speaking of games with exceptional lighting, the hottest game of 2024, the Nintendo GameCube classic Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door is now out on Switch. Or is it out now on Switch? I don't know when it actually comes out. But.
Good question. If not the day that this recording releases, then tomorrow.
Probably Friday releases for
I think
Nintendo.
So, usually, yeah. I guess I can double check while we're talking about it. But yeah, I'm not. I know I sounded like I was being sarcastic about the lighting, but that is like the big visual improvement for the game, right? Like it is in high definition now, so it looks smooth. It looks way better than it did on GameCube. But that's sort of the reason you kind of have to shrug when you're like, is it a remake or a remaster? Is like, it looks a lot better. This isn't just Paper Mario HD. Like they went, and the big thing they added is lighting. Like the lighting looks really great in this game, like on the paper surfaces, and there's things that reflect, and there's like more glowing elements. Like to put screenshots like side by side, like it is very significant how much better this looks than the GameCube version, which is why it's like a little bit more than just a remaster. In the same way Metroid Prime was, I think was that last year or the year before, where it's like it is a port of Metroid Prime, but they overhauled sort of the textures and the lighting to make it look way better than just like an HD port. Yeah, and that's the case here.
Right. And this is your first time playing it, right?
Yeah, so I like Mario RPG the series a lot. Like I like the Super Nintendo game. I reviewed the remake recently. I guess that was last year, and really liked the remake a lot. And Mario and Luigi games I like a lot, and like I played a lot of the recent Paper Mario games, but like I never played Thousand Year Door. Just it came out in 2004. I was like graduating from high school at the time. I don't know why I didn't play it, because I was working at a GameStop at the time, so I could have borrowed a copy and taken it home, but I just didn't.
I was going to ask, like,
reason.
High school age, 2004, did you think you were too cool for Paper Mario at that point?
God, no. Hell no. Me and Paper Mario. I was playing Mario and Luigi, I think, primarily on my Game Boy Advance. There's a weird history with Game Informer and Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door. Do you guys know about this? Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar
casually.
I was recently
I am
informed.
aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say on it. I don't know a lot about it, but if you go look at like Paper Mario on Wikipedia: Thousand Year Door, and you look at the reviews, like Electronic Gaming Monthly 9, Eurogamer 9, GameSpot 9.2, IGN 1, and then Game Informer. Let's see. Let's take a look at this review here. 6.75 out of 10.
Yes. And who was that? Who was that brilliant reviewer? I mean,
I don't know. I'm not sure. I actually.
Oh, actually, do know. I didn't know.
You do? Okay. I don't. You can tell me. I wasn't sure.
I believe it was Joe Juba.
No, I don't think Joe Juba was working.
I don't think
there.
it was.
I thought it was Joe.
No,
I only remember because I thought it came up
Joe
recently.
under the bus if it's not him, because I'm really genuinely not sure who it was.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, and Game Informer got a lot of flack for it. People did not like that Game Informer didn't like Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door, but I mean, the only disclaimer I can offer to that is like, reviewers have individualistic opinions, and whoever it was that reviewed the game didn't like it. I
think I found it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Someone has a scan of the actual magazine review.
Whoa.
Okay. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry, Joe. I heard someone threw Joe's name into that conversation. It was Lisa.
Lisa. Yeah, see, I didn't.
I remember
this was
Lisa
before my time. This was before all our times. I started working at Game Informer in 2011. And then,
you know what's even funnier is that second opinion. So we used to do second opinions at Game Informer back in the 2000s. So 2 people would review the game, and then the second opinion was like a small kind of blurb that gave their own score. I'm only explaining for people that weren't around back then, basically.
I don't know
that might
why
not
I'm
be
like,
aware.
I know this, Marcus.
Theoretically,
other people
if
listen to
one
this
of us-
conversation. Thank you.
If one of us was like really young at that time or something, I don't know. Yeah.
So the second opinion, and I don't think anyone brings this up. So like I said, the main score was 6.75. The second opinion was written by Jeremy, and he gave it a 6.
He didn't. Okay, so
His was even worse, but
Game
no one
Informer
talks
didn't
about
like it.
Yeah, so it wasn't just Lisa, and like no one talks about Jeremy's even worse scoring second opinion, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean I think that's a weird, interesting part of Game Informer history is that we just we were just not on the Paper Mario 1,000-year door train for whatever reason. But I revisiting it, like my sort of perspective on it is I like Mario RPG games a lot. I didn't play this one. This was my first experience with it. And like it's good. Like it is, especially compared to playing like recent Paper Mario games. Like the Origami King, I got like halfway through and I was like, I don't want to play this anymore because there's no progression. Like you're not leveling up in that game. It's more of an adventure game than an RPG. And it was so nice to go back to Thousand Year Door and have like a sense of progression because you do level up. It's like minor. It's not like traditional RPG mechanics. Like you can never hit harder, right? You never do more damage based on your level. You can find items that increase how much damage output you do. And there's only I think there's 3 hammers over the course of the game and 3 pairs of shoes over the course of the game. It's not like you're not equipping stuff, right? It's not like you're ever really doing stat consideration, which is something I really like about Paper Mario. Instead, every time you level up, you can increase your health, you can increase your magic abilities, or you can increase the number of badges you wear. But it's something to work toward, which is like later Paper Mario games just kind of like they started leaning more and more in the adventure game direction. And it's just not really what I wanted. I like having the sense of progression and having a reason to engage with enemies and stuff like that. So it was super nice to go back to a Paper Mario that had that. And it was also really nice to go to a Paper Mario that has like tons of different weird characters that like don't even really fit the aesthetic of Mario sometimes. Like there's levels that are like really cool that I didn't expect, and like you like go underground and find a bar and there's like 5 different types of characters in there. And pretty much I could be mistaken about this, but pretty much after 1,000 Year Door, Paper Mario was almost like exclusively like Goombas and Toads and like the turtle enemies.
There was Super Paper Mario got pretty weird with it.
Right.
But I think after that, you're correct.
But even that one, I was going to bring that up, Charles. Even that one, the characters in that game are just like floating geometric shapes.
Yes.
Like they're
true.
not, they kind of like get further and further away. And like I remember Ben Hansen told me once over at MinMax and former Game Informer that like there was a decree to the developer from Miyamoto that it's like you can only use characters that appeared in Super Mario World. And I don't know the validity of that, but it certainly rings true if you play those games. And like I said, it's nice to go to this game and see just a huge cast of like weird characters all over the place that like never showed up in Mario again. Like that, like that's really nice. But I gave it an 8.25. It is a 20-year-old game, so there were things that I just found kind of annoying generally. Like the combat can be quite slow, and using special abilities just takes like forever, and you kind of use them a lot, so it's kind of gets annoying. And like the structure of the game is like almost every area you go, you get to a town, you go all the way to like the other side of the map to like retrieve something, you bring it back, you give it to a person, and then you have to go all the way back again. And that's frequently the cycle of like how it structurally works. And there's very limited fast travel. And so I just kind of found that part of the game to be somewhat tedious. But like everything else about the game, like I really liked. Just like the tone, the look, The presentation's phenomenal. It's funny. Like, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it, and I'm really honestly like grateful to, like, Brian asked me if I wanted to review it, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, I want an excuse to play Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, the one that I skipped that I think, in generally speaking, is people's favorite Paper Mario. Maybe the N64 game.
That's the popular opinion. Is
Okay.
It's one of the first two. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you say otherwise, may God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah, right. I still think if, like, between the sort of there's like Mario RPG and then it's split into Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi series. I think I still like the Mario and Luigi series more because those feel like a little more traditional RPG, which I like.
I think those are more consistent.
Yeah, like they feel and they're a little more actiony. Where Paper Mario is a little more adventure game. It's almost like you're solving like puzzles and stuff like that, which is good. Like, I have a good time with that. But yeah, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, having it on Switch is great. And if you haven't played it, most of it holds up really well. And if you love this game from, back when it came out in 2004, like, this is a great way to revisit it. It looks great. And there's like little things that are smoother, like you can switch between your partner characters quicker and stuff like that. So yeah, just a good experience overall.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it. I missed out on it too because I never had a GameCube growing up. I haven't really played a ton of Paper Mario. Like, I played the first game and got really far and never finished it for some reason. And actually, the only Paper Mario I've ever finished is, I think, the one people like the least, which is Sticker Star.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On 3DS?
And 3DS, yeah. And I think I like it more than most because I don't have the same amount of experience with Paper Mario and maybe specifically Thousand-Year Door that I didn't have I wasn't married to what it used to be as much. So I was like, oh, this is fine, I guess. But yeah, I'm excited to play some Thousand-Year Door. I got a bit of sticker shock just because it's like $60 for a 20-year-old game. I'm like, okay.
I mean, it's upgraded, but I wouldn't. It's not a remake. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a remake. But it is
because it's just visual improvements. Because it doesn't sound like they did anything to sort of smooth out the rough edges of the game from what you described.
A little bit. You could, like I said, you can switch partner characters faster, which actually makes a difference because like you do quite a bit. And then also you have like shortcut keys now, so instead of like going pause and then going to your gear, you can just press like right on the D-pad to go straight to gear. There's a couple things like that. There's a hint system, I believe, that's fully new that I leaned on sometimes of like, what do I do here? And you can just press a button and one of the characters will be like, hey, have you tried this? And I'd be like, no, you sound really smart for making that suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, and that wasn't in the original game.
I don't think so. I could be wrong about that hint system, but it's like a little smoother, right? It's like 40% smoother, which is nice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door out on. Did I actually pull up the date?
Right. It is Thursday. I did look it up.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Thursday
Thursday
comes out.
So it's the 23rd, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I am
23rd.
also, for the record, very excited about this game.
Oh, good.
I wasn't here the day we narrowed down our most anticipated list, but I put Paper Mario: Thousand-Year Door on there, and I think it was removed because it wasn't like a new game. It was kind of like they're like redoing it. But I never got to play it, and I really like the first Paper Mario, and don't like Sticker Star, and like haven't really touched it past then. This was like one of the handful of games I'm like most excited for. This year, so I'm very excited to play.
You'll like it. Like you'll be happy with it, I think, for sure.
God, this is a random thought. Wasn't there a crossover game with Mario and Luigi that was Paper Mario?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't make that up. Okay.
No,
right.
Paper Jam.
Yeah, I reviewed it actually. Yeah.
Okay, I just thought of like, wasn't there like a one that had more paper in it? At least more paper in the title because it was Paper Mario and then Paper something.
Did I? Here we go. Yeah, I want to see what did I give that game? Because I'm pretty sure I reviewed it. Let's see.
Yeah, I feel like it's the one nobody talks about.
Kyle Hilliard. Yes, I did review it. Okay.
Okay.
8.75. I like this one.
Hey.
Whoa.
What was the second opinion?
Non-existent. I'm seeing here. We don't do that anymore because we didn't have the bandwidth for that starting in like 2008. Turns out they stopped releasing like one game a month and started releasing 5 games a day, and that made it harder to do that.
Yeah, that'll
Kyle,
do it.
you were pretty high on that end also, for what it's worth. It was kind of a reverse of Thousand Year Door.
Yeah, right.
We're really not endearing ourselves to the Paper Mario.
I know.
It's like, oh, this is
IGN
the one you
gave-
like?
IGN gave that one a 5.9. Polygon gave it a 6.5. GameSpot gave it a 6.
Wow, I was on the higher end for that one. I liked that game. I thought that game was cool. Oh wow,
Well, I just
Yeah.
think it's interesting. Yeah.
that is interesting. That's funny.
Jeez. You know, a game that requires quite a bit of bandwidth to play is Manor Lords.
Oh,
Have you guys heard of this?
Yeah,
One of the
a little
hot-
bit.
One of the hottest early access games this year. Came out last month. Yeah, just about a month ago. It's on Steam right now. It is a strategy city builder set in medieval times, where you get to play as the titular Manor Lord. You get your own little region, and you're in charge of building up a town and raising an army. And then you can either build a town that's prosperous, or you can just go full Thanos mode and say, I think I'm going to take over all these other regions and kick out the other lords and just make it all mine. This is a game that I was familiar with shortly before it launched, because I kept seeing more and more of it on my timeline about like, oh, this game has like an insane amount of like wish lists on Steam, and people are really excited about this thing, and I wasn't sure why, because when you just look at it, you're like, oh, it looks like any other sort of medieval strategy game. I don't see I don't see what the magic is here. And I say that with full admittance of my ignorance towards really city builders. Like, I don't really play city builders, and it's not even so much that I don't like them. I just, a lot of it is that I didn't grow up a PC gamer, and that's like generally a PC exclusive genre. And so like my only experience from growing up was like SimCity in like school computer labs and like SimCity 2000 and that was
Right, yeah.
basically
I'm kind of
it.
in the same zone, Marcus, where I just never really, this genre was not one I ever really just engaged with, just because of circumstance.
Yeah, but it was when I was like, I would probably like this, but it wasn't until last year that I got like my first like legitimate like gaming desktop that I could actually run high-end games. So I was like, oh, I can actually play this, because I'm so used to just immediately writing it off. Like, well, I'm not doing that. But it's on PC Game Pass, which is where I've been playing it. It's in Game Preview, which is their early access equivalent, because I wanted to see what all the fuss is about. And so I've played a few hours over the weekend, and I'm enjoying it despite itself sometimes.
Okay.
My biggest issue with this game is that there is like no onboarding pretty much at all, and I don't know if that's like an early access thing of like we'll build that later, which is, if so, that's kind of a weird choice, because it's just sort of like, they throw you in and you get like your own plot of land, and then you have like a starting group of citizens, and you just got like tents, and like this is all they have right now, and then everything else just get building. But there's all these very complicated systems of like an economy and seasons that change over time, and depending on which season it is, like if it's spring, that's the best time to grow crops. But then there's like the land is divided into like, oh, what the quality of the soil basically. So like there's like a heat map of like, hey, if you plant crops here, you'll be more likely to grow wheat or barley. But if you go over here, it might grow a different vegetable. But also when winter comes around, it's going to wipe them all out. So you need to time that right. And then
And it's
also,
saying it doesn't really tell you all this stuff, is what you're saying? Or?
no.
Oh, okay.
There's like some tool tips that pop up, but it's very basic, and it only pops up when you interact with something for the first time. So you don't, but when you don't know, like, where should I start exactly without, because you want to start on the right foot. It's like, I don't want to build something that I probably shouldn't have built till later. Should I, like, what would be like, I don't know what I need to do here. So I looked up a guide, which I rarely do for games, but I was like, I really want to actually understand this and not beat my head against it. So shout out to Rock Paper Shotgun, who has a very, very well written series of guides of like how to get started in this game, and has like step by step, build this first, then build this, and here's what they each do and why you should build this first. Because now I have the kind of like foundation, and I'm only now starting to come off the training wheels a bit now that I've got like a relatively bustling town. But it's neat because it's just seeing the even at this stage of the game, the systems and how they interact with each other, it seems pretty sophisticated, because like every time you get, like, you're pretty much just trying to expand, and every time you expand you get more people in your town. And all the families that move into your town, they all need a house. And then when you build a business, you need to assign at least one family to them to actually get the business, functioning. So like, oh, I've got like a woodcutters. I need someone to cut trees down so that we can turn those trees into wood that we can then turn into other things that we need. So I'll assign a family there. And then whatever family that isn't assigned to a specific job, they're just in charge of building everything. And so you kind of have to balance, like, how many people do I need free to build stuff versus I need someone running this stall or this shop right now. And you can take people on and off stuff. And the seasonal thing comes in where it's like some jobs are kind of, or like seasonal themselves, where one of the few food sources, or at least natural food sources that I have right now is like, there's a forest that grows these berries. So you have to build a forester hut out there so you can actually harvest the berries to have a food source. But then they're only available during a certain time of year. So like when they're out of season, keeping someone at that hut is worthless because there's nothing to do. And I've had to remind myself to like, oh wait, I have a free guy that's just sitting there doing nothing because it's not berry season. So I need to take him off and go do something else until they start growing again. Which thankfully you can also pause the game too, which I recommend when you do anything in this game is just to pause it so that you can actually build things without having time progress. And then conversely, you can also speed up time pretty fast, which is kind of the default speed is like, I think it's like ×4. So you just see dudes just running around and just very quickly erecting things. And you're like, okay, it's fun to watch that, but also it just moves things along. But I don't know, there's so much more I have not scratched the surface of. Like I'm starting to bump into trading, which seems like its own whole system behind it in terms of like how to decide like how many things you want to export and import and what and when, and do I need a horse for this, and where do you set up your trading posts, and like it doesn't need to be like set up trade networks. And then I see I can buy trade routes, which also might expand my reach in a way that I'm not entirely sure about, but I've got like the foundation, and right now it's kind of fun just seeing like the basic stuff. Or like, okay, I have enough houses, I've upgraded the houses, and like some of them have extensions that you can add. We're like, oh, this is not only a home, but it's a brewery, and so like the family business is like connected. Or like this person raises goats, which we can use the hides for my tannery to give people clothes, which I need to do before winter comes around and people freeze to death. So I should probably prioritize that. And now I have a shoe shop that I can use from the tannery to give people shoes. And it's sort of like that web of things that you're sort of connecting. And then there's like a skill tree where you earn points for basically every time you level up your town in some way, you get points, and you can feed into a skill tree to unlock new like perks or just new businesses. Like, oh, if you put a point in this, you can make bakeries now, or your workers are twice as productive mining ore. And depending on where it seems like I'm treating this town as like my things are allowed to go wrong town, so that
right.
if I start another town, I can do it more productively. Because I'm starting to see like it seems like you have to maybe. Yeah, the first pancake, exactly. Which no one's making pancakes right now because I don't have a bakery and I still don't have flour. I am growing wheat, but I made the mistake of starting my first farm in September, and it only dawned on me like it's gonna be winter soon. I won't be able to grow anything. Why did I start this farm now? But I was just so excited that I could unlock the ability to do it that I didn't look at the calendar, which is something I'm learning gradually more and more to like pay attention to what month it is before I do anything. But it's cool. It's very as complicated as it can be. It's also very chill when it's just like, I'm just gonna run a town and maybe try to gear it towards one or two things that it's really good at, which is what I was getting at before. It's like, it seems like I should probably commit to being like, is this just a farming town? This is our main thing. Like, we're just really good at farming, and that's how we make our money. Or should I be trying to do a bit of everything, which is kind of where I'm at now. Just, again, sort of like just messing around with different things of like, I don't know, we mine stuff, but we also create fuel because we need that. But I have a farm now too. And you also have an approval rating. So you kind of have to keep your residents happy, and they all have like prerequisite likes and dislikes. And depending if you fulfill those, you'll level up your town again to go from like a small village to a medium village, which is where I'm at now, to a larger one. I'm working my way up towards building my own personal like manor so that I can be a Manor Lord and not just a lord. Because that'll make me more authoritative, apparently. Like, they'll listen to me better if I have a building that shows my dominance, I guess.
I thought you were just like for flavor purposes. You're saying it's like a mechanic to literally be a man.
It's a building you can... Yeah, okay. You are the Lord, but I don't have the building to back it up because you have to work your way up to it. And I'm very close to unlocking it. I think I need more clay. So I started a clay farm or clay mining or something. The other thing that I have not, or the big thing I have not engaged with at all is combat. And you can choose whether or not you want to fight people. And you can actually, in the beginning of the game, you can choose whether or not you want to even have that be an option. If you want more relaxed experience, you're like, I just want to build a farm and be happy and not have to fight people. You can do that. I played in the default, which is just everything's open. But there have been times where, like, you'll be messing around just building stuff, and then you'll see, like, oh, bandits just stole some of your stuff. And you're like, what am I supposed to do about that? And it's like, oh, you're supposed to train soldiers. Well, how do I do that? Like, oh, well, you got to make armor for everyone. It's like, well, I can't do that yet. And it's like, and I've learned quickly, and the walkthrough told me this, is like, you're not going to be able to do anything about them for a while because you got to work your way up to building stuff. So you're just going to have to get your stuff stolen. It's okay. It's not a lot, 'cause I produce more than they steal, thankfully. But there's occasions where you'll get a letter from like rival lords, or you'll get updates saying like, hey, someone's eyeing a territory next to you and there's going to be a fight over. Do you want to get in on that? And I accidentally said yes to one of them and put the fear of God in me, because then I was on like a 90-day countdown of you better get ready for this fight that you're not prepared for at all.
Oh, it's the old Android Saga situation, right, Marcus?
Exactly. They said,
or I guess it's more the Saiyan Saga, I guess, because that's where they have the timer, right? Where it's like this...
technically it's both.
Toriyama liked that trick, which was a very good and effective trick to be like, we have to train because in 10 episodes bad guys are coming.
Yeah, like some really strong dudes are coming and you better be ready. Which is what the game says too. It's like, hey, this army's coming, get ready.
Set up your hyperbolic time chambers, get your clay place going.
And what was annoying is that you can't like peacefully resolve it because that's not available in early access. Like, it seems like there's other ways you could deal with this, but the only one that's in early access right now is fight and see what happens. But it was weird because I got to the battle, like the time expired, and then the opposing side just kind of gave up without me doing anything, and I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I don't know if they were just threatened by my prosperity and general just peaceful outlook on life. But I was waiting for this to like completely screw my town over. Like, they're going to march in here and tear down everything, aren't they? And then they were just like, nah, they're cool. They I don't know, lost interest, I guess. Maybe because they
lost interest.
Maybe me not reacting, they took that as a mind game or like a weird flex, or like, oh, these guys must be tough. But I still have a bigger problem because I also... And I don't know how I could have gotten out of this if I could, but there was a notification I got that said, like, hey, there's like a bandit gang nearby. Would you like to monitor their movements in case they make a move? And I said yes, because I was like, oh, I should probably maybe keep an eye on that. And then it somehow triggered a year countdown, like a 365-day countdown to the bandits are coming. And that's not what I signed up for. I thought we were just keeping an eye on them. And I'm already halfway through the year, and I don't know how this is going to end. So at this moment, I'm desperately trying to raise an army, and I'm not even close to getting there. So I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm terrified because I'm already kind of attached to what I built. So I'm hoping that they too are intimidated by how peaceful we are and just leave. Or they're going to come in and just completely take over, and then I have to start a new town. I don't know. But I'm having fun with it.
Cool.
Like I said, I'm still like, I still have a lot more to sort of work my way through systems-wise. But if nothing else, it's just a chill sort of like podcast game.
So it is chill, and, like genuinely, like you would describe it as...
It's as chill as maybe you can make it. Maybe if you run it to be actually chill, you don't turn on conflict. Mm-hmm. You know, like you select the mode that's conflict-free. But even when I'm playing now, like, conflict doesn't happen very often, and I don't know if that's something that becomes more of a thing later as you expand and you start to brush up against other borders, because the game, at least the win condition for me is that I do have to take over other territories to win the game, so sooner or later I'm gonna have to, like, I don't know, cut some heads off or something. But for now, I'm just like, I just want everyone to be fed and have some money. And I just bought a horse recently, and that was really exciting for my town. I put up a church, and people were really happy that we have church
when you get
now.
a new fast food restaurant in your little town. Everyone's like, oh, we gotta go to
when we
Raising
put that-
Cane's.
They put in
When
a
we put
horse.
that church up, it was basically like opening it in and out. Like, people were hyped. So
Is it weird that I find that genre more stressful than like any horror game I've played in my entire life? Because just the idea of like spinning plates, right? Of like,
Right.
oh, I gotta go back over there. Oh, I gotta go back over here. Oh, I gotta deal with that. Like, that stresses me out more than like getting chased down the hallway by a monster with a fedora and a trench coat.
yeah, I don't know if I'd say scary, but maybe anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I guess that's what it
Because
is.
it's like there's so much that can go wrong that you don't even realize you did wrong until it's too late.
Yeah.
You know?
I get it also because I feel like you kind of have that, like, that's your job in some aspects, Kyle. Like, you are spinning plates a lot of days professionally. I think there could be a type of person that wouldn't have that like level of control over things, and then they're like, I want to come in here and be the master of the town, be in charge of all these things. And other people are like, yeah, every day at work I have so many things going on and I don't want to deal with that, so it's nice to get home and be like, you got to worry about this fedora guy. If you get rid of, if you stay away from him, everything will be fine. You have one problem.
Yeah, Marcus, is there just a do what you think is best button for like everything in the town? Like,
I mean, I think that's simply every button. Like, I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, I'm easing off the walkthroughs, and now I'm going with God, and not just because I built a church in my town. Like, you know what? What if we had 3 oxen? That'd be pretty baller, right?
oh my
Whoa.
god, a little
I
rich
do
little
think-
guy right here. There's 3 oxen.
There's a thing with these like kind of like viral games. Like I always bring up Minecraft as an example of like, if you tried to get into Minecraft now and you had never watched anyone play Minecraft, you'd be like, this game is terrible because it doesn't really explain a lot of the stuff, or explain like even if you understand the mechanics, you don't understand like, if I want to get diamonds, this is the order of steps I need to do. But with something like Manor Lords, I imagine people would be like watching a streamer play it and then pick up all the things and be like, oh, I want to go make my own.
Oh yeah.
And that, I mean, that's the only way I can imagine it has gotten as popular as it has, is like people picking it up from other people or like playing it together. And I always think it's interesting to like try to enjoy those games in a vacuum. Like if Marcus, if for some reason you really were like, I'm not going to do walkthroughs, like if you would even think it's good, because I don't know. It seems like it would be a pain to figure all this stuff
Maybe
out
just be
for the
too
first
dense,
time.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, the it being good is something I'm curious about, because I don't play enough of these games to compare this to other ones. So I'm wondering what makes this one so special.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is this game doing exceptionally better than other games in this genre, of which there are countless amounts of them?
Yeah, that's a good.
Like, why is this the
yeah.
one that caught fire? Like, what is this doing that has like gripped the imagination of like millions of players? There was a news story I wrote recently where it surpassed like 2 million players, or 2 million sales recently, after just like a few weeks in early access. So I'm just like, I'm like, okay, like are all these people like hardcore like city builder people that look at this and go like, oh, this is the game of my dreams. This is the city builder I've always wanted because it's doing all the things the other ones
a gap
didn't.
there,
Or,
right? Because City Skylines was kind of disappointing, the sequel, because it was like technically having issues.
yeah, it didn't launch great.
And SimCity has been gone for a while, so yeah, I guess there's an appetite for that. Yeah.
I actually thought this game was going to be like silly in a way, because it seemed like the internet was so into it, and I was like, when I was surprised by how straight it plays it. I'm like, no, this is just a medieval city thing. There's no weird angle or slant to it at all. Like it takes itself pretty seriously, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's not even like, there isn't even like a humorous attraction to it. It's just like, I guess it just does the thing really well, while still also coming together in early access. So yeah, I'm going to look into that more. It's like, someone that is really familiar with these games, tell me why this one is so good compared to the other ones. But I will say, this game also has me, because I am enjoying it, it has me looking at my copy of City Skylines that I've had on Steam since launch and being like, maybe I should launch this up and see if I like this, because it's like, I know they've been patching the hell out of that game. I don't know where it's at now.
might
Like
be in a
if
good place
now would
now.
be the time to jump into it. But it has me eyeing it more than I was before I started playing this. So we'll see. I don't know. Are you guys gonna check this out? Does it seem like up your alley, even just as a curiosity?
No.
Probably not.
Sorry, Manor Lords.
You guys almost synchronized your disdain for the game. No,
No,
I'm
it's
just
not
kidding.
disdain.
I left a
it's-
sliver of
it's
hope
not-
in mine. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not disdain or like it's just not my genre, you know. And like
Sure.
I don't know if this will convince me. Maybe it will. Maybe I should give it a shot just for that reason. But yeah,
I've also never been like a PC gamer. That sounded like I meant two different meanings
you
of the
do
word
use
PC.
a lot of language that we cut out of this podcast. Charles.
I don't like it. It feels very unnatural to me to sit in a chair at a screen and play a video game. That's just like I don't know. I also this is where I work.
Isn't that
so it
what you
always
do
just
in
feels
front of your
weird.
TV? Technically,
But it's a couch, and
different,
I'm so often laying down on the couch. It's just like very different. I don't know.
No, I'm with you.
So it's probably not.
sure.
Not my thing.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. But yeah, Manor Lords, everyone. I'm probably gonna keep playing it, so maybe I'll check in throughout the year as it comes together with any updates. I'll let you know what happens when the bandit apocalypse hits
Please.
my town
You're right.
and how many lives were lost. I can build a mass grave, so I'm kind of eyeing that. Maybe I should get this ready ahead of time.
Wow.
Get it ready ahead of time.
Scare my citizens. Like, wait, why are we
great.
building this? Like, oh, no reason.
Don't worry about it. Just build it. Why are you asking
Yeah,
questions?
Get back to work. Charles, you have a few games that you've jotted down here that you want to talk about. So I'll pass the baton to you, sir.
I do. Where should we start? I'll start with the game I have finished, which is called Duck Detective. I think the full title is Duck Detective: The Secret Salami.
I was gonna say, like, don't not say the subtitle.
Yeah,
because it's
Duck Detective:
delightful.
The Secret Salami.
Yeah.
And it is like a little mystery adventure game. And I've talked about my love for mysteries and
And ducks.
I do like duck. It's in
Duck,
my
duck.
name. I also I don't know. It just the vibe of this was always good to me. And I had just seen trailers of it before, and I decided to check it out, and it's delightful. It's
Nice.
it's very short, but it plays like in like an Ace Attorney game. There's like 5 cases. This is like one of those 5 cases, so it's like only takes like 2 or 3 hours to beat. You're just basically going around this office, and I think it's a good thing. Of a lot of the mysteries I like are like murder mysteries, or like there's like adult themes to it. This one is like you're a detective and your wife left you, but you're a duck. And it's because you're addicted to buying white bread. Like, he's not an alcoholic, but he talks about bread like it's alcohol.
Right. Which is probably apt, because I remember hearing that bread is actually bad for ducks and that we shouldn't be feeding them bread.
Oh, is that right?
Probably.
Oh.
It's usually, when it's like that, yeah, it's usually like the equivalent of cake to them. Or like it's
I can
just
see
way
that,
more
yeah.
processed than they would need it to
I
be.
mean, it's not great for us either. Just like white bread. To be
Yeah.
honest, right?
But yeah, and he gets called in to a it's like the offices of a bus company because one employee stole another employee's lunch, and you got to figure it out. And I don't really say anything other than that. It's like very cute. It's voice acted very well. It's not. It kind of has like a Paper Mario aesthetic, Kyle, which
Okay.
is interesting. Like the characters
was-
are just little paper things that waddle
Pulling
along.
up a
I was gonna bring that up. Yeah.
Can I play this on Steam
Yeah.
Deck?
Probably. I played it on Switch.
Okay, that's my
so
question.
it would
It's
go great
basically
on
my
it.
question is more: is this a mouse and keyboard game, or is this like a controller game? It sounds like
Yeah,
it's a
controller's
controller game.
fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I was gonna ask, like, how puzzly is it?
So a lot of the gameplay comes down to you'll talk to people and you'll find like certain pieces of evidence and you'll show it to people, or you'll be like, hey, what do you think of this guy, or what do you think of this, and as they respond to stuff, or just as you talk to them, you'll get like keywords in your inventory basically. And sometimes it directly relates to what you're talking about, so you'll be like, hey, who do you think stole this lunch? And they'll be like, I think it was Freddy because he stinks. And then you'll get like Freddy as a name added to your inventory. But then other times it'll be like, the duck detective will be like, hey, how's it going? And the guy's like, I don't want to talk to you. You're being kind of creepy. And then you get the word like creepy added to your words inventory.
Okay.
And then in your notebook, you'll have these like fill in the blank chunks, and you'll have to fill in like the appropriate words for different sections. So even if the word creepy wasn't being used to describe someone, it might be in the solution of a thing to explain like what happened in one room or in a specific instance. So that's like as puzzly as it gets. There's another kind of tricky puzzle that I think it very much is like kid friendly, but I can see a kid getting stuck. But it does have like a hint system if you do get stuck.
Okay.
And again, it's not very long, so I don't imagine someone being like super stumped on this game forever.
Sure.
But yeah, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl duck.
Duck.
Nice.
That sounds kind of.
Also wanted to point out, this is by Happy Broccoli Games, whose last game was Kraken Academy, which was a game that I never finished it, but I did have fun with it for the time that I played it.
Yeah, I remember my wife played that game. Okay, cool. That's interesting. That makes it more enticing.
I never checked that game out. I originally knew about the game because I followed the developer because I was a fan, or I guess I am a fan, of Brian David Gilbert, formerly of Polygon, and he voiced a character in Kraken Academy, and he voices a crocodile in this game. So that was how I knew. Next game I'm going to talk about is called Baladins. So it's like Paladin, but with a B. And it also has kind of a Paper Mario-y aesthetic, interestingly. I know there's like a Twitter page I heard of. I haven't actually looked it up, but like it's a whole thing of people making Paper Mario-esque games with that aesthetic. I think because it's probably pretty easy to make a 2D shape moving around a 3D environment as opposed to like learning a bunch of different 3D modeling techniques.
There's a game called Roofy and the Underside, something like that, but it also has like the Paper Mario style characters. Now that I'm thinking about it,
There's that bug.
We have to come up with-
too.
yeah. We need a name for like
Fable?
Bug Fables. Yeah.
And what's you're like a little kid. It's kind of Pikmin-y.
Tinykin.
Yeah.
Yes,
Tiny
that
Kin's
one
like-
also
I love
kind of has that
Tiny
vibe.
Kin, yeah.
We're turning into this Twitter page.
Anyways, Baladins it's like a fantasy game, and it's an RPG, and it's also like a time loop game. So there's like a type of basically adventurers that are the Baladins, and when you start a game, you can select one of like a few classes. There's like the cook, there's a dancer, those are the two I've been. Those are the only two I remember off the top of my head, but there's like 5 or so. And it starts off and they're just like, hey, we're going to have this festival. Can you go talk to this person and let them know a thing? And depending on the class you choose, you'll have different stats, but you can like raise or like lose stats depending on like the actions you do. And it's kind of board gamey. Like the map has like certain dots and you have to follow a line to go on those to go from one area to another, and so within a week you only have so many movements and so many actions. So you start out with this simple task, but then when you reach the end of the week, then this like time travel dragon shows up and basically forces you back in time, and so then the new objective of the game becomes break free of the time loop. So now you're playing as these heroes or whatever, and your stats reset at the start of every loop, but you like remember just as a player, like, oh, I wanted to go here and do this thing, or oh, this guy needed this thing, so I'll prioritize that quest.
So it's a little bit of a rogue element to it, I guess, right?
Yes,
like a light.
But it's not. I at least haven't gotten to a point where you can retain stats at all, and then also. For the most part, you lose all your items. You can like pick an item to save between loops sometimes. So there's like things you can do to like prove to someone you're in a time loop, basically. But yeah, so it's like an interesting puzzle thing. And then you have stats, and I'm a sucker for Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games. Your stats, it's like a plus. It's either like 1, 0, 2, or like 8 is like the big one. For each different class is a different arrangement of those, and then it rolls 3 6-sided dice to determine whether or not you succeed on a thing. So there might be a thing of like, organize the library, and you got to do like your knowledge skill, and you got to get an 11, but luckily you have a +8, so you're probably going to get it. Or it's like, oh, you need to get an 18. So numbers, fun.
Numbers, fun.
And there's a fun thing about it too of like, I was playing as the cook most of the time just because I just kind of got used to that stat spread. But if there's like a physical challenge you really need to do, you can switch to like the dancer for a loop, and then the next time you'll be better at that. So game's cool. It's already out. I think Duck Detective comes out today. Baladins came out like a week or so ago. But that game I'm playing on Steam Deck also, and it runs great.
Awesome. Anything else, Charles?
The third thing I was going to talk about real quick is 1,000 Times Resist, which I believe is how it's
yes.
pronounced. Which I have not played all that much of, but it's like a narrative adventure game. It's a weird like future, and there's a person named the Allmother, and she's got a bunch of clones of herself, and you kind of travel through these like memories of hers, I guess. And I haven't played all that much. I'll probably talk about it more next time I'm on the podcast, because I know Alex is playing it too, so we can have a conversation. The main thing I wanted to say is I'm playing it on Switch. I got a Switch code. And I think it's probably better on a different platform.
Okay, one of those. All right.
Okay.
It doesn't run poorly, but it's very like pixely. Like I can see the pixels in the 3D models. It's not that the resolution is low. It's like the models are weirdly pixely.
They've been like
and
downscaled
it's same on
a little probably, or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever the term
it's same on
is.
handheld and on the TV. So game's probably good. I haven't played all that much, but if you're gonna check it out, I'd recommend.
Is it an action
PC.
game, or it's a narrative game?
I think it's just narrative, but
Okay.
I haven't played that much of it, so it's possible there's like combat or something I haven't reached yet, but I'm not really getting that vibe.
Okay.
It's one of those games that seems like even the Steam page, it didn't make it totally clear what it was, and I've been told that the more blind you are going into it, the better. So I wasn't like looking too heavily into it. I've just seen people going nuts for this game. I know I think I saw Jacob Geller like praising
Yeah,
the hell out of
he's
it on
into it,
Twitter.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like an anime kind of situation. I thought it was like a cool action game. I'm like, I'm silently watching the Steam trailer now. I was like, oh, I didn't. Okay, that's what the visual style is well, anime, but interesting. Yeah, I'm curious about this.
I probably wouldn't have been interested in it if I hadn't heard such like high praise for it from people whose opinions I respect. So I'm giving it a shot, I think.
Yeah, it was a game I had heard of, but until everyone started losing their minds, I was like, oh, okay, I should pay attention to this. Okay. Awesome. I have a very quick shout out or game that I'm playing right now called Hauntii, which is Haunt, but with Tii. Those two I's are important, maybe. I don't know. But it'll be available at the time you're listening to this. I've only recently started playing it, and I've put like less than an hour in, so I don't have a ton to say. I will mention that I'm immediately enamored with this game's presentation. The premise is that you're playing as a ghost who recently passed away, and you've plunged into the depths of eternity, and you're trying to get to heaven while also trying to piece together how you died because you forgot. So like early on in the game, you play this little 2D ghost, and you're just moving around, and you find this angel lady, and then you work together for a little bit, but then as you try to go to heaven with her, you get shackled back down to earth. Almost like Hades a little bit, now you think about it. And now you're just trying to get your way back to her. And I like the look at this game. Like it's largely black and white, but there are times where you go to another level and it's like black in a different color. Like right now I'm in an area that's like black and green, but it's got a very kind of like animated, like ink, like ink drawn, like art, like pen doodles a little bit. It like, and the animation, it reminds me, I was trying to figure out what it reminded me of I was playing, and I still hadn't nailed it. But like when I watched the animations, which are very fluid and have a lot of personality behind it, I was like, I know I've seen something like this. I just cannot put my thumb on it. But all I can say, I like the way that this game looks. It's got a really cool vibe to it. I really like the soundtrack a lot too. Like it's a very sort of like chill and like almost like meditative kind of like lo-fi kind of soundscape that it has. And it's an interesting game where you're just moving down these environments, and it's kind of like a twin stick shooter where by holding the right stick, you're firing these kind of like spectral blasts that you can destroy enemies with, but it's primarily used to haunt things. Whereas the ghost, you can shoot a bunch of different objects and then jump inside of them. It's got a little bit of a Mario Odyssey kind of vibe to it because of that, where you can possess like a tree. And some of the interactions are like important and like are used to either fight enemies or solve puzzles. But then some of them are just more like mundane and cute. We're like, oh, I'm in a tree. If I could shake as a tree, which might drop some like currency, or the shake as a tree. Like I possessed a hill early on, and there was some like funny dialogue where the other hills saw me do this, and they're like the hill you possess is like, oh man, I've been possessed, and then another hill is like, yeah, ghost, there are more interesting things you can possess. We can't really do anything, but it's cool that I guess that you did this. And I haven't dug in nearly deep enough to see how like where the game takes that or how it uses it, but it's a fun thing where I'm just possessing a bunch of stuff and just seeing like, oh, what do you do? Like I possessed a turret that could be used to shatter these like unbreakable sort of like resource caches that your normal gun or your normal, I guess, blast can't break apart. But I'm already like down for this game basically. I'm picking up what it's putting down, where I'm just like, okay, I like the vibe here. I like the look of it. I like staring at everything, and I like the humor. Like it's got a pronounced sense of humor that I'm on board for. So I'm excited to dig into it some more. But yeah, that'll be out now.
I played the demo a few months ago, and I think I got to at least the point. I think the demo has you going up with the angel and coming back down.
Yeah,
I think. And I was playing through that sequence, and I was tearing up. And I didn't even understand, like, why. Because it wasn't clear what was happening. But the music and visuals were just so stirring that I was like, this is affecting me. And I didn't expect this to happen. So I want to get back to it and play some more.
Yeah. And, Kyle, you've written down here Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which you talked about last week.
Yeah.
What is your update for this game?
If you want to hear more about that game, I talked about it last week. All I wanted to share was that I beat it, and I'm very proud of myself because it is a dense, weird puzzle game that you can look at my like social media accounts. I shared a picture of like my notes, which was like 4 pages of just like handwritten scribbles that just look like the ramblings of an insane person. But I haven't been so proud of finishing a game in a while. Like I was just like the final puzzle when I solved it, and it was like access granted. I was like, oh my god, I did it. No one else has done this, which is not true at all. But I just felt that way. I will probably write a full review for the site. But Lorelei and the Laser Eyes was like a left field. You know, it was announced a few weeks ago or months ago, and I really just played it just to check it out for the podcast. And I was like, well, I'm not putting this down until I see credits. And I'm 20 hours later, here I am. So. So I think I'll have a proper review on the site for that one soon.
Did you ever do the last puzzle in Tunic?
No. I beat Tunic, but that was like you had to like New Game Plus it. There was like a door, right?
Well, no, you don't have to New Game Plus it. It's like the last real puzzle of the game.
Okay,
like it's
I did not.
Some would say it's like the true ending if you beat the real puzzle.
Yeah,
the golden road, the golden path.
Yeah, the golden path.
Did you do the golden path?
That was that's my in my head crowning achievement of final game puzzle. I wanted to know if you could compare it to that at all. I'm interested in this game. I just didn't know it would be creepy. And I don't want to be.
Is it scary?
It's a murder mystery ultimately. It's
that
very
makes
vague.
me like it.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't want to spoil anything about the game because it's very much like you're just in a weird house solving weird puzzles, and then all the sort of text documents you find that feed into those solutions are kind of in the background telling a murder mystery story that doesn't come into focus until the end, really. In a way that I found really satisfying and cool. But there's no jump scares. This is not a jump scare game. This is just a mood game.
I played maybe an hour of it. And it wasn't that there were jump scares. It was just that I was so... Kyle shared one of the puzzles in the Slack.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He was like, I couldn't figure out, and then I got it. And I was like, well, I got to play this
felt
game
salty
if I'm so smart, I guess.
See, I thought you were implying that the puzzle had a jump scare. I was like, that's a weird idea.
No. But then I booted up, and it's just like, it's not like scary. It's just like you're in a dark, scary hotel, and there wasn't like a jump. It was just a vibe.
It's a
It's
vibe.
unsettling.
That's what
Yeah.
pulled me in so much, is that it's not like you're not getting jump scares. It's just a vibe of like, what is this place? Why is it so weird
Right,
and
it's
dark?
like unnerving.
Yeah, there's a guy
That's
will-
almost worse.
He won't jump scare you, but there's a guy that'll show up and just point a gun in your face sometimes and like ask you a question, and maybe you get it right, maybe you get it wrong. It's I really like it a lot. It'll probably be on my top 10 at the end of the year, and it really snuck up on me.
Nice.
play it.
Yeah, that's another one that I've heard a lot
Charles,
of people.
you don't have to. No one's making you do this.
I feel like I do because I like all the parts of this. It just made me uncomfortable because it was so creepy.
Yeah.
But I should push through it because I'm an adult and it's okay.
There's a friendly
It's not
dog out
real.
front that you can go and pet
There
anytime
is a
you
nice
want.
dog.
He's a very nice
But
dog.
can you trust that dog, really?
You can. His name
ultimately?
is Rudy. You learn in the documentation. He's a sweetheart.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's another one that is on my list to check out. So
I actually, Marcus, I want to hear your thoughts on it when you get if and when you get a chance to play, because I want to hear how you think it compares to that. What was it called? The puzzle game in the mansion. What was that? That was
Botany Manor.
I want to hear how it compares to Botany Manor, because I didn't play Botany Manor, and I'm wondering if I should, or if this is similar, if they're more different than I realize. I don't know. I'm curious.
I mean, you should, just because that's a good game on its
yeah.
own. I don't know if it'll deliver the same puzzly thrills as Lorelei. But I haven't played Lorelei, so I can't.
Yeah,
say.
I'm
but
curious.
you should play Botany Manor just in general.
right? Yeah, I want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you get a chance to check it out, let me know what you think. Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, that'll wrap up what we're playing right now. It's time for some housekeeping. Of course, like I mentioned at the top of the show, print subscriptions of Game Informer are still going for their sale price of $19.91 for 10 issues a year. You can also subscribe for 2 years and get 20 issues for $39.99. It is a fantastic way to support Game Informer directly, and we very much appreciate it. If you're watching the video version, you can see Kyle and Charles both demoing the Star Wars Outlaws issue. Look at them flip through the pages there. Look at all those words that we wrote. Hey, I like that you both showed things that I wrote specifically.
Well, you're in that Star Wars issue, man.
Yeah, and if you subscribe now, you should be getting the Hades 2 issue as your first issue, I believe, which I wrote as well, and also one of our best covers ever, just in terms of the art.
Definitely.
So
Cover, yeah.
I'm waiting for that one to come in the mail. I'm excited to get it. Be sure to check us out on social media. You can find me at Marcus Stewart 7. You can find Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard, and you can follow Charles at ChuckDuck365. You can check out Game Informer on a variety of social media platforms, including Twitter, /X, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. And you can also find us on our Twitch channel every Friday for Super Replay, twitch.tv/Game Informer. We hit a wall last week, or I almost...
You hit a timer.
Which some might say it's its own wall.
Yeah.
God, I'm still salty about that. By the way, our Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask Super Replay, for those that aren't aware, still going through that. Still very much. It's currently in the Zora Temple, or the dungeon, or whatever you want to call it. But next time for sure. Also, of course, shout out to our awesome podcast editor Matt Storm, aka DJ Storm again. Make sure you check out their podcast, Reignite, as well, a BioWare focused podcast, as well as Fun and Games. And yeah, it's been a while since we've done this, but I'm excited to jump into some listener questions. Of course, if you want to influence the show, you can send us questions either on our Game Informer Discord channel in the Game Informer Show tab, or you can email us at podcast@gameinformer.com. And this first question comes from email. It comes from Michael from... I hope I say the name of the city correctly, because I've never heard of it. But Michael from Pahrump, Nevada, writes, "Hello at Game Informer. Just wanted first to say this is easily my favorite podcast. Always funny, but also keeping me knowledgeable about upcoming games. But my main question is, has there ever been a time when you reviewed a game, whether super positive or not, that you noticed the other reviewers from other outlets had the opposite opinion of where you seemed to be, and you were in the minority? did you ever think to yourself, am I missing something here? I thought this was very timely, given what I mentioned before about Hellblade.
I've never really felt like I'm missing something, because like when you review something, you're reviewing your experience with the game, right? I came in low on Alan Wake 2. And
I was going to bring up that you just went through this with Alan Wake 2.
And like some people got mad at me, but like the fact of the matter is, like, you can read my review, and I explained my experience. You know, it's not like I missed some gigantic portion of this game. It just didn't click with me in the same way it did for everybody else. So I experienced this somewhat recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I've certainly thought that, especially when I was like newer at this. And it's like it is more like when I was more insecure about my ability to critique, you're sort of like, oh man, did I miss something? Was I wrong about this? Which is a weird thing to say about your opinion, but again, when you're just getting started at this, and I'm probably not alone in that, you almost hold yourself a little more beholden to like, well, my peers who are better at me said this was good, and I didn't think it was good. Maybe I'm the wrong one somehow. So I definitely identify with that.
No, it's the children who are wrong.
Nowadays, no. And it's even, I think it's weirder when you're on the more positive end of like, I did everyone else miss something? Or you're like, or did I see too much that no one else saw? And it's an interesting conversation when you're on the higher end of things. And I'm thinking about that now with Senua. Well, I'm not thinking that specifically. Again, I'm at the stage now where it's just like, oh, it's my experience. It's everyone's opinion's going to be different, and it's all valid and okay. But it is an interesting sort of like thought process of like, man, it's interesting how like this made me really happy, and then it made other people like genuinely upset.
My only instance, I've never reviewed a game and given it higher. I think the highest review I gave was Pentiment, which I gave an 8.5, which was the first game I reviewed. I remember doing that and being like, I feel good about this review. This was a fun game to start out with. And I think IGN gave it a 10. And I was like, what am I? A 10? Like, I liked it. I also that game has like a ending section that I didn't vibe with as much as like the earlier section. I didn't see anyone else talk about that. I think as time has passed, I feel better about it. But at the time, I was very much like... And also, I don't think like it wasn't like 10s across the board. This wasn't like a Zelda game or anything.
Yeah, wasn't it someone's GOTY? I remember that. It was like it might have been Video Game Chronicles GOTY that year. Or someone.
Well, it always is like when a major outlet like an IGN gives something a 10, you can't help but kind of be like, really? Like, okay, like I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like, and I don't doubt your 10, but it's like sometimes it's like, oh, okay. And Pentiment was one of those for sure. Yeah.
And the other side, which it wasn't that big of a difference, but I really liked Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and I think I gave it an 8, which I thought was fair, and it wasn't like that much lower. I just remember being on the upper end of that, and I don't know, like just feeling like it feels weird because when you have an opinion that you don't publish, then you can't be wrong. But when you're like checking your work with other people, it's like, am I too into this? Do I like this more than I should be liking it? But I often find the farther I get from a review, the better I feel about what I said of it.
Yeah. I also hate that question, and I've done this here where I was like, I shouldn't like this as much as I was like, you like it. If you like it, you like it. They're like, I shouldn't like this as much as I do.
That's silly. Yeah.
Yeah. Adam Mitwe via email says, I've been reading a lot about recent studio closures by Xbox. I've worked for a tech corporation that was bought out twice. In both instances, many positions overlapped and some employees were eliminated. Also, many veteran employees on the higher end of the pay scale were eliminated to save money. Unfortunately, that's how our corporations work. Back to gaming, I'm a big fan of Starfield despite the negative reviews and need for refinement. Games like Starfield have hundreds of hours of content and at times feel very watered down. The amount of content, of course, means more artists, sound designers, writers, actors, testers, etc. To my question, do you think this will mean that more devs will only be able to produce shorter, more focused games and less open-world games? Or do you think there will be even more of a shift to the continuous revenue generation like mobile games and Fortnite?
Well, certainly...
Basically, are we moving... are we moving towards smaller games or more live service?
I mean,
stuff?
everyone is gambling on Fortnite. Everybody wants
Yeah.
Fortnite, and it is a problem because that is a big gamble that often doesn't pay off, And so,
Right.
like, they can throw a lot of resources at a project like Suicide Squad, or something like that comes to mind as like a recent kind of comparable thing where it's like, and then if it doesn't hit, which they usually don't because they're not Fortnite, then it becomes a problem, and then people lose their job. And I mean, I think that's where it's going to keep trending for a while. I don't like that. I actually would I would love smaller experiences by smaller teams that were almost like, safer bets, I guess you could. It's there's no such thing as a safe bet in any sort of art industry like movies or film or TV.
Maybe a more
movies and film are the
sustainable
same
bet?
thing. Yeah, maybe. But because there was that report from a couple months ago that it's like, was it like 70% of gamers are playing 4 games, right? And
From
it's
from like years ago.
Yeah, it's like, why if you can be one of those 4, then you're all set,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to doomsay or anything, but like it doesn't feel like we're going in a good direction.
Yeah, it's like on one hand we should. It's almost like what was the Sonic meme of I want shorter games with worse graphics and to have to be paid more.
Yeah.
That is actually just I'm just gonna do it because he's my friend. Jordan Mallory helped a podcast editor for Fanbyte tweeted that out, and it was turned into a Sonic meme. But I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Hell yeah.
I just want because I know I want to credit.
It's a good summary.
Right. Yeah, and it's like that is more sustainable than the millions of dollars that we throw at AAA open world stuff that is like every big game now. It feels like, so you're like it seems like you solve the money problem by just doing that, but then we've spoiled the audience on expecting those bigger games to where like you see outcry of like this game's only 8 hours, what? And then people get upset. And they're like, especially because games are expensive now, I mean, they've always been expensive. It's an expensive hobby, but like, with games being $70 and, for the people that only buy a few games a year or just like, everything's expensive now because inflation and whatnot, it's understandable that you want to feel like you're getting bang for your buck, So even if the game is like exceptional, just hearing like, wait, I'm going to be done with this in like a day or a weekend, like, I don't want that. So then as a publisher, you're kind of in a weird spot, and we're seeing more and more now that like the single player kind of like prestige television stuff that maybe Sony does, as great as it is and as well as it sells, if that even is going to be enough now, as we kind of shift more towards like, or like seemingly seems to shift to be like maybe you have to do multi-platform now because even if a game does really well, for whatever reason, that's still not enough. So we got to put this out somewhere else, With like, we're seeing more PlayStation games come to PC now, a lot of their first party stuff. So yeah, it's like, what do you do there? It's like that's probably more sustainable maybe than trying to make a Fortnite and hope that it lands nearly as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm also interested to see like when COVID happened and there was a bunch of games that got delayed, and then in like the past 2 years they had like all been delayed, and then a bunch of really good games came out all at once because there had been kind of like a cork that had been unplugged, and it's like, okay, we figured it out, the games come out now. I don't know how immediate it'll be, but there's like so many studio closures and layoffs that like there literally aren't the same number of people working in the industry as there were even 5 years ago. And like 5 years from now, if we get to a point of like, oh, I remember back when there used to be so many AAA games all the time, because now there just aren't. And I don't know if the executives are planning for that, or if it's going to be like a harsh reality of them being like, oh, we can't, lay off thousands of people and then expect to have the same output. But that's like a long-term thing I'm interested in seeing, of like the types of games, but also like the amount of games or the quality of those games.
Right.
I mean, to be cynical, I think a lot of executives do think that that we have to lay off a bunch of people and expect the same output. I think that is kind of the dream for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, whether or not that actually works is a different story, but
I was gonna say they assume that, and then I'll be honest, Marcus, I had a pause where I was like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
No, don't. Don't do that.
I'll say that they thought this through and they talked to people about it that were smarter than them before doing it. But I don't actually know if that's
Assume
true.
the
I was
worst
just
and be
being
surprised if things go well. That's like the best.
it's like you learn about CEOs the same reality that you learn about your parents is like, oh no, they screw up all the time. They're not these
guessed.
like beacons of objective correctness. Like you have the phase where you look at your parents so they can't do no wrong generally, and then you get old enough to be like, oh no, they make a zillion mistakes. They're just people. And then as a kid, you're like, oh, if you're a CEO, you're probably like a genius. You can't just you don't get that high without
You
being
don't
like
fail
the smartest
upwards.
guy
That's
ever.
not a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's just assume the worst. Assume you can run it better than they can.
You probably can. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll ask one more question. We have a couple more here, but we'll save them for next week. Got an interesting one, a little bit of inside baseball from Mash Start Button via Discord, asking, in the course of a normal day, normal in quotes, is there a dedicated block of time for y'all to play something, even if it's not for a review? For example, is 10 to 11 o'clock typically reserved for gaming, and then all your other work is structured around that?
That'd be so cool. Not that we can't do that. It's not like nap time.
Yeah, I'm curious here, Kyle, because I don't know if this has changed, because you've obviously worked here longer than we have. But like in the time that I've been here, it's always been generally pretty loose, and it's sort of just in terms like we have a morning meeting that is the same time. Yeah, generally depending on days where it's like today, like a podcast or like replay, and our morning meetings. But outside of that, it's sort of just loose and based on what we each have on our plates, just personal projects, and then sort of structuring around that in the way that we see fit, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, not all jobs are like this, but we do have a job where you are given an assignment to complete by a date, right? You have a deadline,
right?
And the sort of the way we track. I mean, I'm not saying this like officially internally. It's not. We don't do that. It's not like we have an Excel document. But the way we track success, the way we track if like, oh, everyone's doing good at their job, is like if you're turning in those projects at deadline, right? So like, the only like so. Really, it kind of comes down to like as long as you're getting it done on time. Like I don't care how you get to the finish line. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like if you want to work from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., I don't care.
And in terms of like game playing, like I had a stint where I was trying to like in the morning, like for like the first hour, check out like a demo.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
Just something like, because, we'll get demos through emails, and if it's stuff like, I don't know if we're actually going to do anything with this, but I want to check it out, or if it's like Steam Next Fest or something like that, like, let me just play one thing just to have it on my mind that, even if we do nothing with it, at least I have it in the back of my mind for something. And then that fell apart because of just like shifting things of like, I have to do something else at this time now.
It's tough to have
I have a cover story.
Yeah, because our work. The other weird thing about our jobs is our workload shifts. We're coming up on a deadline in like a week or two, and then it's going to be quite busy for us. But once we ship the magazine, there's a little period of like research that we always have every month and a half or so.
Right.
It's a weird schedule job. I always liked the idea. I never committed to this or made it a scheduled thing, but I was always like every morning, because like we have our 10:30 meeting. I was like, every morning from like 9 to 10, I should just like stream. Like whether it's like I'm playing a game for fun, whether I'm playing something for review that I'm allowed to play, whether it's just checking out a bunch of demos, like it's like it would be great for our Twitch account to have that consistent time period, but it's just the workload, it just changes so much that it's like it's kind of impossible to have that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, as someone that I guess basically runs the Twitch channel, that's something that has been a struggle for me. Like, if you've noticed why we've had less streams of last week, is because I had to do the Hades cover story, and that was sort of a thing that came together kind of quick. But it's funny, we did for a little while, Kyle, and some readers or listeners might remember this, but we did try to do like Monday morning streams for like a period. Like I think we called them, I think it was only for multiplayer games, and I believe we called them multiplayer Mondays. This is when Alex Stadnick was still here, because it was like
it's a good idea
thing, and but it was proven very hard to keep it up. Like I think after the third week, we had already skipped a week because something came up, and we're like, okay, we can't. And then from there, it just became so infrequent that it just sort of like died after a while. So it's trickier, especially because we're such a smaller staff now. Like even from when I started, so like there are some days where like it depends on who's on staff. Like if it's a day where Charles is available, then it's like, okay, that's one extra body. And depending on what my workload is, then maybe I can have a little bit more like freedom to like, I'm gonna go play this thing. And again, this is me, and this is not even talking about review games. You know, this is just like, hey, I'm gonna check this out and see if this could be something.
It's funny when a big review game comes through, like, you know, when Zelda came through last year, in whatever year that was. You know, I don't always do this for review games, but that was a game where I was like, goodbye, everybody. I will see you in a week. I'm going to turn off Slack or whatever. Like, you can text me if it's an emergency. Like I said,
we thought Kyle died.
We don't do that. You don't do that for every game, every review game. Like Paper Mario, I took very slowly and just sort of played on during work hours on my own time. But sometimes, it is just like, see ya, I'm gonna go work on this.
And sometimes it depends on how big the game is. Like Zelda's like super important, so we're like, oh, we want to hit that embargo. So like whatever you got to do to get it out, we will let you go in your hyperbolic time chamber and never hear from you until it's done.
It also depends on when you get the code, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's like if you got Zelda, I don't know, 3 days before it came out, thank God you didn't. But then it would just be like, okay, I mean, I literally can't do any other work because this is more important than all of that, and I have to spend all my time doing this. But like with something like Paper Mario, when you had enough time to take it slowly, that's like that's better. I remember I had Ace Attorney Collection like so long in advance. And I was gonna play it anyways. I like didn't even really play it during normal work hours because I was just like making my way through it on weekends and in evenings over the course of like several months because I was like, why not?
It's one thing that I actually like about this job, as chaotic as it can sound. I kind of like that flexibility. I like going in and not always knowing how the day's gonna go. Just in terms of just like scheduling, I kind of like that.
I have so many days where I'm like, I gotta play Paper Mario, and it's like that's all that I got, and then I log in and it's like 4 o'clock, and I'm like, well, didn't play a single lick of Paper Mario.
And then Kyle, you have a timer up in the right corner of your screen that's like Paper Mario bandits attacking in 14 days. Just know that's when the embargo is.
I mean, some embargoes do feel like that. Deadline. Honestly, it's a good exercise in time management, and I've found in the time I've been at GI, my time management skills have improved. But even though I still feel like it could be better, I feel like Brian Shea has amazing time management. Just from like outside looking in, when I look at how much he gets done and how he blocks his time out, I'm always trying to like replicate that. I really should just pick his. I think I talked to him like a year and a half ago about that. Like, why are you so good at this?
I feel like Wes is the one I look up to as like time management king because he comes in earlier than everyone else to do like early news
and stuff.
And I feel like his output, I'm just like, oh my God, you've done so much, and I just clocked in.
You guys are all fine, by the way, as your boss.
This is our performance review.
Everyone's doing good. I'm very happy with everyone's output. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, it's more of just like I like watching everyone and how everyone kind of like blots out their time to go do what they need to do, and then sort of pick like, maybe I could be better in that way, the way Kyle does that, or Charles does this. I'm like Mega Man. I like absorbing all of your best traits into
look
myself.
to Brian. Don't look to me.
No, it's too late. But yeah, that'll wrap up listener questions, and that'll wrap up this episode of the Game Informer show, because we have to go block out time to go like do like 5 other things probably.
That's right.
Yeah. But thanks for listening, everyone. We will be back next Thursday with another episode of the GI show. Until then, we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Wait, Marcus. We gotta throw a song on the end of this sucker.
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
that's right.
I don't know which one to do.
We don't have to pick the song right now, but we need to at least tell you to stick around. to hear another
Okay,
Charles song.
I could do the I could do the ending again.
I mean, it's fine.
Okay.
Honestly, just leave it like this. What a great
Okay,
casual
yeah.
way to end the podcast.
And now, guys, you're
Speaking
not
of
gonna
blocking out
believe.
time, we have to put a song at the end of this, everyone. So yes, we're gonna listen to a new lunch song from Charles, which I have no idea what you picked. So I'm excited to listen to this and see what gets the win there. So yes, please stick around to listen to Charles's latest lunchtime masterpiece.
Chicken rotisserie. Hey everybody, you can come and eat. Oh yeah.